set that up right. But today's show is all talking about not just the EV market and the competitive advantages in China and how they're using AI currently, but we'll probably also branch out a little bit more into how China is having a competitive advantage in AI across things like robots. We're starting to see more and more humanoid robots on the streets. But we really want to dive into like what is going on, what makes it different in China, how they're able to be so competitive so quickly, how they're starting to dominate the EV market as part of it, and why Jim Farley, who's the CEO of Ford, said that it was, quote, the most humbling thing I've ever seen after going multiple trips over to China to see how their EV market worked. There's a lot to this, from US brands partnering now for software from China to using their own vehicles. So let's dive in. Let's talk about that today. It's the Daily AI Show. Today is July 24th, 2025. I'm joined by Andy and Jimmy. I'm Brian. And yeah, guys, I think this is one that I've been wanting to do for a while, because I think, just from my personal standpoint, I was curious about what really makes the difference. You know, when you look at BYD, which I think stands for Build Your Dreams, but BYD is the main, I shouldn't say one, it is the main EV builder in China as of right now. But there's others that are very competitive as well. We don't see those for our audience in the US. We don't see those in the US due to tariffs and other reasons where it wouldn't make cost effective. It wouldn't be a cost effective decision to have these Chinese cars for good reason over in the US. But they're very, very popular, not only in China, but also in other parts of the world. And when you look at what they're currently doing, it feels to me like when I was a kid, even some sense today, but when I was a kid and one of my friends would have the crazy opportunity, or their parent would have a crazy opportunity to go over to Japan and bring back some technology that literally felt like, as a kid, it was ripped from the future. Like, what do you mean that's what their Walkman looks like? Or what do you mean they have a non-skip CD player? Or what do you mean, like, whatever? It would be some device that I cared about as a teenager, or even maybe younger. Somebody had gone over to Japan and it just felt like, where is Japan? Why are things so cool in Tokyo? You know, like, where do I, how come we don't have that over here? And I feel like it's almost now at age 47, I feel in a very similar situation, although obviously we have more resources to find out why. But when you look, just as Jim Farley did, CEO of Ford, not a small position here, when goes over to China and says, there's clearly a difference with where they are with AI versus where we necessarily are. Now, I'm not talking about all models. I'm not talking about what OpenAI is building. I'm just talking about AI in the public space as people are interacting with it. Something we're going to all see a lot more. Like we've always said, there'll be a day where we have robots walking among us on the streets of Austin or San Fran or name your home city, and we will stop thinking that's weird. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it will. It will just happen. You'll be just like, well, I don't know. That, yeah, of course they're walking on the same sidewalks as me. That's normal, right? So anyway, I bring that all open to you guys. There's a lot to discuss here, especially diving into like where China sort of started this process years back, like 2007, 2008, and they made some strategic moves as the government that really set them up for success and where they are today. But before we dive into that, let me say good morning to everybody who's in the chat. Thank you for joining us. Greg and Jude and others in there as well, Jeff. But Andy, Jimmy, thoughts initially before we sort of dive into the individual pieces and parts of this?
Yeah. China is an enormous market. And, when you have the scale advantages in a major consumer product like an automobile, it's major both in terms of its overall price and its ubiquity. I mean, everybody wants to have a car. It's not like it's just a niche market, right? This is the central market. And so it's an enormous market, and they've made incredible investments over there. And it's true that their technology for automotive is more advanced than the US technology at this point, and for European manufacturers as well, who are still, I think, in part because there's all this encouragement for the continuation of fossil fuels. You have this sort of political pressure in the form of legislation and incentives built into the structure to support the old technology rather than the new technology.
Hmm.
I mean, it's mind-numbing why that would happen, but that's not happening over in China. And so in the automotive market over in China, you can get an incredible supercar at prices comparable to your family sedan over here.
Hmm.
And let me just talk about the one that I am lusting after, which is the BYD Yangwang U7. This car it's not that expensive, right? It would cost less than many of the cars that you would get here that are just, not that incredible in terms of technology. So this has an intelligent suspension system that is using, obviously the designs of it were incorporating AI in the design, but there's a lot of smarts built into automobiles over there and in electric vehicles. And as we know from the case of Tesla and its combination with X and Grok, that AI is going to be a central part of the use and operation of a vehicle, not just the design and development of the vehicle. But here's a case with this electromagnetic suspension system where this is a much more intelligent automobile and close to a robotic automobile. Here's what it can do. The system scans the road up to 1,000 times per second, predicts bumps, and instantly adjusts each wheel's damping and height. This ensures the car maintains a level chassis and smooth ride, even over rapid alternating washboard surfaces or when a single wheel encounters a severe bump or pothole. It can continue driving when it loses a wheel because of its modification. It can raise the vehicle to clear obstacles, leap over bumps by jumping, and keep moving. It maintains stability over extremely rough terrain. And the videos, if you check it out, just go look on YouTube for the BYD Yangwang U7. It's amazing. They go over the test with the best of the U.S. cars, and the things bouncing back and forth all over the place. The Yangwang proceeds across the washboard test surface, and the chassis, the seats in the vehicle don't move. The wheels are fluttering to do it, but the wheels don't move. That's what I want. I want unfettered AI driven technology advancement for things as central as our vehicles. And our government is telling us, no, 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 go buy a diesel engine or go buy a big V8. That's what you need to do in order to be a sort of a manly man, in my case, in the United States. I'm sorry, I'm ranting here.
No, no, no. While you were talking, I wanted to pull up because I didn't know what it looked like either. I was like, well, let me see what the Yangwang U7 looks like. And obviously, we got like a commercial kind of playing here, Andy, as you're talking. And they showed it going up the steps. They showed it lowering to go underneath a reduced height, like maybe an entrance into a car garage or something like that. Yeah, let's see if we got anything else cool in here. Talking about uh, battery packs and things like that. Yeah, it's getting into like the build and all that. So yeah, like a four door sedan on there. Now, one of the things that Jim Farley had mentioned when he was talking about it was that he felt like this wasn't just like a car that was smart. This was a smartphone on wheels, and that there was a fundamentally different way of thinking about how vehicles were built. Now, one of the things that makes BYD and some other ones very, very tough to compete against is that they have the end to end supply chain. They build the batteries. They're one of the largest battery builders in the world. They are able to handle everything from inside the supply chain of China, which you can imagine unlocks a whole host of abilities. But what he talked about was that it was more like having a high-tech AI assistant the minute you stepped into the car. It had facial recognition to know who the drivers were for the things were set. He said there's no syncing of your phone. It simply knows where the phone is and how to sync to the technology in the car, whatever the preference is, seat, I'm sure, and everything else in there. It's just that higher level order of AI integration that we don't see and probably won't see from something like Tesla. Then you get into the zero map selfless driving. Their selfless driving blows anything from like in terms of like a Tesla out of the water. They no longer have to have highly detailed maps, and they can deploy. I think it's Pony is the company, or the US name of the company, can deploy cars in cities that it's never been in before. And it's able to navigate just like a human would, just if I wasn't given a map, but I was still able to make my way around the city, even if I didn't have a map that necessarily told me where to go. And that's another level of like selfish driving, that autonomous driving, I should say, that we're really not seeing over here. So, when we get these reports and Elon Musk and this is coming and this is coming, and I mean, you had Tesla owners, I know Tesla owners who paid for the super duper package only to never get that. But they paid for it, but it's not coming, it's not here yet. It doesn't do what they were promised, and now there's lawsuits involved with it as well. Versus what you see over there. So you go, okay, well, hold on a second. Where did China come from in terms of doing this? Well, it's not out of thin air. This has been a strategic move for the last 15 plus years. They started by having a really, fast initiative, even going back to like 2007, 2008, which we had EVs here as well. But they started pushing hard there. They gave really, really big discounts and subsidies to people. In fact, the estimates said it would cost the government $60 billion over the first 10-ish years or so, until they realized that there was some corruption, some other reasons why that wasn't necessarily the strategy. And they sort of pivoted in like 2017, if I'm not mistaken on there. Like 2020, China releases its new energy vehicle industry development plan that they've been sort of running from 2021 through. It's supposed to go through 2035, setting a goal for highly autonomous vehicles to be in widespread commercial use by the end of this period. 2021, you have robo taxis like Baidu's Apollo Go and Pony.ai that have received permits to begin operating the first commercial fully driverless services, no human safety driver, in parts of major cities like Beijing, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou, if I'm saying that right. 23, BYD surpasses Tesla in the first quarter as the world's largest producer of pure electric vehicles. Volkswagen announces its landmark 700 million strategic partnership with Xpeng Zheng, I don't know how to say that, Xpeng, to co-develop EVs, signaling a major shift in strategy for legacy automakers. Even last year, 2024, Xpeng and Huawei, I'm not sure how you say that, begin the wide rollout of their next advanced driverless systems that can navigate complex environments without relying on high definition maps, like I talked to. And even this year, the comments that kind of hit the news waves, and what made me want to do a story about this was those comments from Jim Farley, who were saying, again, it's one of the most humbling, quoted, paraphrasing, it's one of the most humbling things of my professional career. And that's the CEO of Ford. So I don't know, Jimmy, what are your thoughts on this as they look at it? Obviously, there's a lot of competitive advantages. Clearly, we're not looking at a democracy versus what China is able to do. They also control all the data. Driverless cars need data. If you control the data and you don't have to worry so much about privacy rights and who gets access to that data, obviously that opens up quite a bit of the roadblocks. If you have end-to-end manufacturing, and you're able to do everything from the batteries down to the wheels, that opens up things. If you have subsidies from the government that's saying push towards this, that opens up things, even down to getting a license plate, Jimmy, which apparently is very hard. Like, I'm not using, I only know what I know in the United States, but over there, if you live in a dense city, getting a license plate can be very, very challenging. They had years ago had relieved that and even said you could use some bus routes, bus only lanes, if you bought an EV. So clearly there's been all this push to make sure that the government is moving in this direction. And now in 2025, we're seeing, not just 2025, we're seeing what that actually looks like, not just something on paper, not theoretical, going to China and going to a major city and watching all around you, not just a few Waymos, but 1,000 different driverless cars operating around the city. And I didn't see anything in terms of accident rates or anything like that, safety rates. I'm not sure how much we would see coming out of China, to be perfectly honest, but I clearly don't think they're building people killers either at the same point, right?
Yeah, I think my big takeaway for this is things that you already identified, and that's the vertical integration, right? And that there has been specific governmental plans and support, right? Like you laid out, they started back in 2001 with just they did a R&D study
Mm,
about identifying what is the big potential technologies and fields that going for the next 20 years is going to be important to double down on. And um and they saw that new energy or EV vehicles is going to be that. And then it's once you've decided and you've made the decision that that's where the research points, then it was simply just creating a work back plan from that. It's like, well, how can if EV equals X for us, then how do we get there? Right. And this is when you started hearing about the big development in sustainable energy, energy production. This is when we started seeing the big dams being planned and built so that you got plenty of hydroelectric power. You got
mhm,
plenty of solar technologies coming out. These are all infrastructure investments so that they could institute their plan, 10 city, 1,000 EV plan. It's a pilot,
mhm,
right? This is subsidies for manufacturers building EVs and people can buy them. Then there are other development plans, like you mentioned, Apollo, uh, where where they've developed methods for um, expanding the plans to multiple cities and
mhm,
then rolling out those robotaxis back in, I think, 2021. I think that's what you said there. But one of the big things that they rolled out just a few years ago was highlighting that it is mapless.
mhm,
Are the map systems on this site are all high definition maps and have gone through all of the Google mapping systems and all those kinds of things, whereas they have this over the air system that they've devised. And so this is kind of one of the takeaways I got from the Farley statement was they kind of have they've built a approach. So they identified that EVs was going to be a huge component for them. This is the future tech. Then they designed the plan to roll out across their nation, right,
mhm,
and integrate build up the infrastructure that was needed. Then came the point where it came to being able to build out the scale, go hyperscale and things like that. And this is all supported from shifting to a data oriented uh, system, right? So they collect all the data, build out their model, they integrate an over the air system so that they can plug in more data. And this is what's driving the robotaxis. This is driving all the self-driving vehicles. This is the saturation. They're getting the manufacturers are getting credits upon credits from the government as part of their plan, so that more and more people are using this and building up that larger infrastructure and those corresponding technologies and corresponding industries. And I think that's the big part, is just a much larger infrastructure and that vertical integration. And that's why you have this powerhouse now. It's like, oh,
mhm.
we're self-sustaining. We're rebuilding off of our own stuff, right? And what was the numbers that was going around? Like 70% of they own 70% of the market
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that,
something like that,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and so that's a huge market domination. But beyond that, it's everything that's interconnected, right? Because we recognize issues in supply chain. COVID taught us that right off the bat. It's like, oh, well, here's a one break in the chain, and a whole lot of things fell through the cracks. So I think the big takeaway here is if you invest in that infrastructure, you invest in the supporting technology, you invest in that supply chain, and you can own all the components, like you said, the
Mhm.
vertical integration, you're a self-sustaining, or you are a sustainable industry, and that's just going to keep going. There's no reason for it to slow down. Now, how do you be competitive against that when the last 20 years you haven't been doing diddly?
Well, I mean, just supply chain alone, the US automotive builders are highly dependent on supply chain that comes obviously from outside the United States. And then you see what's going on with current, political um, moves as far as tariffs and things like that, or even the threat of tariffs, which can really, really disrupt those supply chains. People get a little cautious. What's it going to cost? They preemptively raise prices in order to protect themselves in case parts get tied up in shipping containers and all these things that go along with that. And it really makes you think, well, how would a US company become competitive? Can Ford become competitive with it? Or is Ford so big and so part of a legacy build that, much like Volkswagen and others, I'm sure, it's just easier to partner with that Chinese software and technology. One of the technologies from Neo is called Nomi, and it's talking about how it's an assistant. And it says Nomi is not a simple voice command interface like Siri or Alexa placed in a car. It's conceived as an embodied digital assistant, the very soul of the car. It uses a physical head-like interface on the dashboard that turns to face the speaker using an AMO LED screen. I'm not sure what that is, to display expressive emojis that convey emotion. But the interface is just the surface. Nomi is deeply integrated within the vehicle's interior cameras and sensors. It uses facial recognition to identify users and can perceive their mood through sentiment analysis. If it detects the driver is tired, it can proactively suggest playing relaxing music. If they're tired, I would go the opposite direction there, or initiate a cheerful conversation. That makes more sense to me. It can differentiate between speakers in different audio zones, ignoring background noise and focus on the person who addressed it. It even functions as a digital nanny if its sensors detect a child or a pet has been left alone in a hot car. It will send an alert to the owner's phone and can automatically activate air conditioning or lower the windows. And so this idea, right, that it's not car first, then add software. It's software, then add wheels, And so I'm not sure. We've had plenty of startups here. I was really bullish on. Do you guys remember the startup Canoe? Does that name ring a bell for you guys? Canoe, I think they folded. To be perfectly honest, I'll double check that to see if I'm right on that. But Canoe was one of the startups in the U.S. And what I really loved about them was they basically built the skateboard, and then they said, "This is the skateboard," and then you're going to be able to put like the Ford Eco van, right? You're going to be able to put 16 different types of tops on this, from a flatbed to a two-seater to whatever the case be, right? But like this is the skateboard that it goes onto, where the battery pack is in the wheels. They traditionally will call that the skateboard because it kind of looks like one. And I thought, oh, that's really, really novel. That's a sort of ground up way of thinking about building cars, is to think about that technology and then make the parts more interchangeable. Honestly, I don't think it ended up working for them. They probably would have needed funding through like Amazon and things like that. But that's what I thought it would take. Something that was novel and different, but to build and scale in the US and then try to rely on perhaps, where the supply chain is, seems like almost insurmountable. Now, we just had come out from the Trump administration. I had like a 90-point plan. I have not dug into it, but I think that came out within the last day, talking about the strategic initiatives for AI. It calls out China in that plan and says, we need to be competitive and all that. But I'll bring it back to you guys, or Andy, I guess, or whoever. Like, how? How do you decide to be competitive when you're up against these types of challenges? Everything we've outlined so far. I don't know the answer to this, but I'm just curious what you think.
For many years, we had the leading EV software-driven vehicle manufacturer in the world. And that's been surpassed now. Tesla has been surpassed by BYD. We did not do what was needed. Instead, there were continuations of incentives for internal combustion engines and for the existing, manufacturing. And that's where this sharp distinction happens between China's approach and our approach, because here you have a coherent strategy that has really created, not just in automotive, but in all the different areas of manufacturing of every type of consumer and industrial good. Like, they have a coherent strategy for dominating world production on those things. And what we're doing is we're saying, okay, eliminate the EV incentive that was driving a lot of Tesla purchases here and supporting Tesla. Now, there's lots of other reasons why people don't support Tesla anymore, including one with a specific name. But that's aside from what the sort of chaotic and incoherent approach has been to the development of automotive autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles to be adopted by the U.S. population. So I think a lot of this is it's an unforced error by the United States, and we're just getting a great example in China of something that we may not feel really good about the political environment there, but if it comes to enterprise and evaluation of their overall approach to economy, they seem to have struck upon a winning combination there. And it's going to benefit them in robotics. It's going to benefit them in AI. AI will benefit them everywhere. And you have companies from China that have really substantially differentiated and advanced models, like from Alibaba's Quen line, that are going to compete very directly with even the most advanced early leaders that came from the United States, from Silicon Valley, and from the major frontier model developers that are still, very much in the game. But China can couple that with the fact that it's very difficult to manufacture anything in the United States. I don't care what it is, even a garment, right? Why? Because the manufacturing expertise and infrastructure and technologies to support manufacturing have been developed in China, not in the United States.
It's true. So I guess the bigger question becomes, how do you approach this, right? Do we need to compete on this in this context, or for this subject, automakers, or do we need to pivot and change into other things? Are we looking for a do I guess the question I'm asking for is it more beneficial for the country to shift into another market where we do have an advantage and do similar things like China did, and do a bottom up, top down type of planning, and develop that process, and just say, okay, cool, well, it's going to cost X to try and reevaluate the entire auto industry? Or is it going to be more beneficial to more of us if we develop something else? It's like, oh, okay, cool, you got EVs. Awesome. We'll start buying all of your EVs. We're just going to develop something else and be just better at that.
I think the question gets back to my final point, which is it's not just EVs. Whatever it is that you want to build, whatever market you want to dominate, you better choose to do it in some way cooperatively with China, because China is and there are some other South Asian countries that have sophisticated manufacturing capabilities, but not on the scale that China does, with the immediacy and competence that China can deliver. So we're not shooting ourselves in one foot, we're shooting ourselves in 2 feet. by not investing in our own capabilities, we shot the right foot, and by becoming antagonistic with China and putting, a tariff wall between us and important sources of the component technologies and products that we need for our consumer product system, that just shot herself in the left foot. And that's all. Those are political decisions. Those are not market decisions, because the market would prefer to continue its cooperation and integration in a global scheme, not an isolated United States, return to the 1950s manufacturing powerhouse. I mean, it's really insane what's happening.
I wanted to point out here, because brings up another point. I'm just bringing up the website now. This is byd.com/US. And so they actually do have a US facing site. Now you can go to BYD and go to the Chinese site that has all the other models. But interesting enough, on this website for the US, they only show this one model, the BYD Han. And you can look at what it does. And there's actually a lot, like, you can kind of see. Nothing revolutionary as far as having the big screen in the middle of the car and so on and so forth. But as I was scrolling through here, one of the things I was curious about is, okay, obviously buying a imported BYD car would be financially wouldn't make sense in the US because of the tariffs. You'd have to pay double the amount of the car, if not more than that.
It's actually triple. It's 248% is what would be added to the car. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's even if, I'm sure there's other issues that go along with that too. So my question is, I know not a lot of times, but I've heard of other companies, perhaps like BYD, where the idea is, look, they've developed all this technology. They still have the end-to-end integration. Does that mean that they could then build a factory in the US? And if they were meeting whatever the requirements of building within the US, because it's not 100%, there's like certain criteria that go along with it, what components were actually built in the US or sourced in the US, or is that lipstick on a pig? I mean, is that at the end of the day, it's still going to be Chinese manufacturer, it's still going to be hit with imports and stuff, even if they were starting to be manufactured within the United States. Of course, this is just, look, we know we have audience, by the way, that's outside of just the United States as well. So this is just, sort of a US issue at the moment, but I'm just curious what you guys think in terms of, do you think that's a long-term plan for a company like this? They've definitely done the research. They've done the building. They're now the biggest EV builder in the world. Their AI technology, or other companies like them's AI technology, seems to be second to none. Do they have an opportunity now to actually land and expand in like the United States, where they would have the ability to start building cars within the borders here? And that part, I don't know whether that's something that's even a possibility.
So let me answer that. Yes, the only practical way for BYD to sell cars in the United States would be to design the car to meet the unique U.S. emissions and safety requirements. No other country in the world has the exact same requirements that the cars for delivery in the United States have. So it would have to design and build in the United States in order to avoid the tariffs. But they're not going to avoid all the tariffs, because all the components of a BYD car are manufactured in China. So it means in order for them to build in the United States, they'd have to build a replication of the entire supply chain over there. Now, there is something that you need to understand about electric vehicles, is they are much simpler in terms of parts, right? Those parts, it's not like you have 750 component parts of an internal combustion engine. At least the engine component and drivetrain are simpler, and therefore do not require as many imported parts necessarily, because you could do that. But let's go all the way back to the batteries, which are essential to an EV. We don't have any reasonable source of some of the rare earths that are required for battery manufacture. Who has them? China. So now we just shot ourselves in the left arm, right? Because by being antagonistic with China and being in a tariff war with China, we're just preventing ourselves from having access to, globally, at least in the near term, the only sources of meaningful quantities for production. And so I'm not hopeful that BYD is going to be selling a car in the United States anytime soon. I'm surprised, actually, after reading about from the research I quickly did this morning, that no BYD cars are licensed in the United States right now. It's prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
To convert a BYD vehicle to pass customs and border requirements to be delivered into the United States. So just what's going on? And
I'm surprised there's not somebody
of,
with like a lot of money who did it just to do it, Andy, but like you'd be buying a $20,000 car for 200,000.
Right.
But there's people who have, your point though, like my point is like, there's people who have money who want to have the thing that doesn't look like all the other things on the road. That's to say, I don't even know that it's interoperable or can charge on the same network. Does it even have the same conversion, as far as plugins and stuff like that? I don't even know that part of it.
It probably does, because for many years, Tesla has been one of the leading EV cars in China, right? And now it's not going to maintain that position. Although I think recently Tesla got approval to continue marketing in China, and some of the barriers to their continuation have been removed.
Well, with the time we have here left, I mean, just a few minutes, like let's expand on this, because obviously we've been talking pretty much solely about the EV market, but Andy, you pointed out that it's not just EVs, right? Or Jimmy, you were saying like maybe we have to focus in other areas. Increasingly in the last, I would say, days, weeks, I've seen more and more videos that are verified of like AI humanoid robots out and about in the city streets. And so we are seeing AI technology, embodied AI technology, and quite frankly, an EV is an embodied AI technology if you're looking at something at the level that we were just talking about earlier. That's isn't that just a robot on wheels? Is that just because it carries passengers? How many steps removed of that is an embodied humanoid robot that can safely move passengers in and out of beds in hospitals? I can tell you just from my time as a firefighter and having to move patients, it was always a fast route if you weren't careful, because people are unpredictable, of throwing your back out because people do weird things. Stair chairs were always my least favorite thing to do, going down, because no matter who needed help, they were always in the farthest back bedroom. They always had the most furniture in the way, and they lived on the 9th floor, and there was only stairs to get down. That always seemed to be the case, right? As a firefighter. And we'd have to put them in stair chairs, and it was literally a one step at a time, constantly reminding a patient not to reach out and grab a chair rail or a step well, because you might kill all of us going backwards down the stairs. It was always a process. Like, it was always a thing. And so I look and say, like, well, how far away from like something like a safe humanoid robot who would actually be able to carry or manipulate or help that patient down, right? Well, if they're carrying humans and cars carry humans, and it's autonomous in its ability to navigate the stairs from the apartment in the back bedroom, or it's autonomous on its way to navigate streets, aren't we still saying EVs sort of fall into that same general category of embodied AI, as China is sort of looking at it? And then so like in your guys, research and what you've seen, or TikTok or YouTube videos or whatever, what have you guys seen that's kind of like blown you away in terms of other AI, embodied or otherwise, inside China, that's kind of like at that next level? Again, being the kid looking at Japan and saying like, how are they already doing that? That seems so far away from where we are.
I'd say because they have such a strong manufacturing arm, and goes back to the supporting supply chain and infrastructure and all these related fields, that it all overlaps. right? When you can do power generation, when you can do power storage, when you can do micronization, if you can do, all of these components that all interact into the same kind of related field. So the embodied AI concept, there's a reason why they can manufacture $10,000 or $20,000 humanoid robots. There's a reason why this is in the hands of people already, right? It's still early days in terms of saturation and mainstream, but it's far more ahead than the US is, right? The US has been following all the work of like Boston Dynamics for a number of years, and
Hmm.
then came on, Figure and all those kinds of things. But that's still development. That's still highly focused demonstrations. We are now seeing videos of people using robots for entertainment in terms of like robot fighting and
Yeah,
stuff like that. And I'm not
I
talking
saw that.
battle bots, from the 90s. I'm
Yeah,
talking I'm talking humanoid robots punching each other, you
yeah.
know. So it's when you can when you can see that kind of implementation of the technology, that means it's gotten a lot further. The
Hmm.
ability to move it from a development cycle into a practical, real world. Here's the day to day function or application of it. That's that is a clear sign of the advancement and the support of that sector, right? So I agree with Andy in terms of the approach, and this idea is like, oh no, we need to build in time to rebolster some stuff that we threw away 30 years ago, manufacturing system. Um I It seems a little shooting ourselves in the right foot to try to spend time doing that when we should just be doubling down on the stuff that we're really good at, and creating new things and leading the charge on a bunch of different other technologies or even related technologies, or just reassess how we're distributing our brain trust and our resources. But in terms of China and where it's at, it's got all the components. There's nothing that's going to slow them down.
Yep.
And like Andy said, they literally have the base resources in the ground where they're
Right.
at to support it. They don't need it from anybody else. Like the Chinese minister for commerce, I think a few month ago, was in an interview, and because we're talking about this tariff, and the reporter asked them, uh, the U.S. makes up about 15% of your purchases. Is this going to bother us? Like, we don't care. We'll just cut them off. Essentially, they don't care about their 15% because they don't need to. They don't need anybody else. What they're bringing in is supporting, certain aspects. And funny enough, agriculture, um, like pig farming and corn and wheat and stuff like that, not technology. So I don't see anything that we can do if we want to compete. That's the other question, is why do we need to be number one? Maybe there's a larger, more in-depth discussion about if you're not at the top and with your current policies, that'll cause you to tank. I don't know at that level, but it doesn't make any sense to me to waste our time and energy on this like pivot, right? Businesses that don't adapt are doomed to die. So if that's how you want to treat the country or look at the country, then pivot, change, adapt. So I think China's just they built out a great foundation. They're self-sustaining in this particular field, and they don't need any external influences to function. So there's not anything stopping them from branching out and growing out and becoming the leader in all of these ancillary technologies.
Yeah, a major line of defense against irrelevance has been the primacy of our top educational institutions like Harvard, like Stanford, that are seed grounds for the latest and greatest technology. And I'm afraid to say that that's also one of the areas where we're trying to shoot ourselves in the foot by hobbling our advanced research, both by reducing government investment in research labs and also by demoralizing the leadership of our advanced uh, academic institutions.
Well, we'll wrap it up there. I want to say thanks to everybody in the comments. Thanks, Delma. It's such an interesting show today, learning lots. Yeah, Delma, that's sort of the idea, right? And I appreciate you. Thanks to Greg and Jude and everybody else in the comments as well for bringing their insights to it. We read those all the time and try to bring those into the conversation. Sometimes we're able to pull them up on screen. Tomorrow, we're actually, it's what we would call our, it's the down the rabbit hole or it's the squirrel show. It's basically our opportunity to either look back at previous topics, because inevitably we talk about we'll talk about it's Thursday, the 24th. We'll talk about, China and EVs and AI, and there'll be some major announcement tomorrow. And so that happens a lot. We do a live show 5 days a week. It's inevitable. So it gives us an opportunity to look back at some of our last 2-ish weeks of conversations, but it also just allows us a chance to say hey, you know what I think is really interesting? It's not a full show, but it's really interesting in what's going on with AI, and we'll have a good conversation. I believe it'll be the 3 of us next tomorrow as well. So I hope you come back and hang out with us next week. We have a guest host with us for 3 of the days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Ann Murphy will be back joining us again. We love Ann, and she's graciously said to help us out while some other of our folks are traveling or out or away from the show. So you can expect to have her and her, viewpoints and opinions, which are phenomenal. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Lots more shows coming up next week. All sorts of fun topics, from dynamic pricing and what Delta's doing in AI to a whole bunch more. So come on back tomorrow. Hang out with us for a fun, open-ended topic conversation with myself, Andy, and Jimmy. And until then, thanks everybody in the comments. This was a fun topic. I'm glad you hung out with us, and we will see you again tomorrow. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like what we're doing. We do this 5 days a week live. We're one of the few AI shows, I would say, that does that. If maybe one of the very few that do that 5 days a week. So we appreciate the support. Until tomorrow, everybody.
Aloha.